Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. This is another episode that is taking place in the hangar here in Denison this time. So you may hear some plane noises, some voices. That's just because, sometimes there's a lot going on over here on the airport, which is a good thing. But I think you'll be able to hear us very well. So I just wanted to give you all that heads up. Today I'm sitting down with Tyler. And Tyler, we really haven't gotten to talk a whole lot. Would you mind introducing yourself just briefly so people know who you are?
Yeah. So my name is Tyler Brown. I'm a CFI for Thrust Flight, specifically here in Denison, Texas. I went through the ZTA program beginning February of 2023 and finished my ratings approximately around April of 2024, and was kind of lucky and very fortunate to get on to instruct with Thrust, and was given the option to either to stay in Addison or come up to Denison, and I figured change of scenery, a little slower pace than DFW was probably good for me, and decided to go up north a little bit. And at the time we had the Skyhawks, so that was a little bit different. I did the training through the Archer, and I thought it was just overall a good change for me. So
yeah, I think a change of pace, no matter what, always sounds nice. That's absolutely how I usually feel myself. Do you live in this area?
I do, yeah. Nice. So I
nice.
Had an apartment with one of the other instructors, and we live about 5 minutes down the road.
Oh, that's super awesome, man. Yeah, that's very convenient. It's nice and chill out here, and there's still things you can do, and you can still get to Dallas if you need to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's all good. But if I were to ask somebody who knows you, to describe you, or if there's something that, made you feel kind of understood when people, know this thing about you, is there something to know about you? Maybe it's a characteristic or something like that would help other people understand you?
Yeah, and I think
really
one of the
question.
I think one of the when we do our training as CFIs here at Thrust, and we do the CFI Academy, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest attributes that we look for in a CFI is one that provides adequate instruction, that actually truly cares. And I truly feel like I try my best to put my best foot forward and to go that extra mile for my students, because I would want that the same way from my instructors. And I had great instructors that did that for me, and I want to keep that going.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell when someone's not necessarily all the way in it.
Yeah. And when you join this program, it's extremely rewarding, and it's a career that will pay off in the long run by a lot. But we invest a lot of time and resources on the front end to do this program, and you really want your instructor to be on your side to really push you forward through the program, and to be that extra crutch that you can lean on. And so I try to be that for my students, and I hope they appreciate it. So it seems to have been successful so far.
Okay, and then I want to kind of zoom out a little bit. When did you know you wanted to fly?
Man, I have always been in love with aviation, and not a single person in my family, with the exception of a distant cousin, is involved in aviation. But they say you get bit by the bug and it lives with you the rest of your life, and that was something I don't know. I just think it's amazing that aviation, the creation of it, is just something that it's just amazing in my opinion, and always wanted to be a part of it, whether that was on the ground, in the air, flying. I just always wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, so that's really awesome. And that's why I like to ask that, because people have so many different backgrounds that got them interested or where they're at now. Was there a time when you actually had to make the decision to move towards it? Were you considering going a different way, a different career path? It's right here.
So I graduated from Louisiana Tech University in 2018. I started college doing the professional aviation pilot program at the university. It didn't quite work out for me at that time. And so what I did end up doing is switching to my degree is in aviation management, which is pretty much anything as far as airport management, corporate aviation management, and I went the airport management route. And I spent 2.5 years in Fort Myers, Florida, doing airport management, and moved back to Texarkana to do airport management. And actually, I crossed paths with Patrick.
Oh, wow.
Through airport business. And so we, business involving the airport, we crossed paths with Patrick. And that was about the time that the airlines started increasing the salaries, and that itch started coming back. And, I just had that ultimatum, I was like, you know what, this is the time to do it. it's either now or never. I'm tired of watching the airplanes. I want to fly them.
Absolutely.
And just so happened it timed up right with Patrick. I was like, I want to do thrust. I think that'd be a good program.
I think that's a really cool way to have gotten started, especially at Thrust. But the reason I say that is there's so many. First of all, it seemed like you were aware that there's a lot of different roles to have in aviation. So that's something I would maybe have you talk a little bit more about. What made you take a route like you did instead of just going straight for flying? And did you imagine it would work out like that? And then before I forget, a question I'll try to tack on there is there anything you would say to other people about networking and being involved in aviation adjacently? Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question.
No, you're fine. We hear it all the time. Aviation is such a small industry, and it truly is. The people that you meet at some point in time, the chances of you crossing paths with them again are very much more likely than in the medical industry or business. It's just we just have that unique aspect to our industry.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It's very strange at times.
And you hear corporate, and not to interrupt too much, you hear corporate jobs and things. It's always like a goal to build community here. People are like, I don't know how y'all got y'all's community. Like, we didn't do it. It's the students, it's the pilots.
Absolutely.
So, anyhow.
I think because of that, it's there's getting involved in aviation can be just as simple as volunteering at the local FBO to help out there, to give discovery flights for high school programs, to becoming a board member or chapter member for your local EAA chapter, or getting involved with the National Business Aviation Association. We're very personable, if that's the right term. Like seeing people in person goes a lot further away than typing out and trying to make connections electronically.
I think society is kind of learning that again.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the pendulum is swinging. It's like, hey, we got to get out in the world a little bit because it makes more progress happen. But to your point, anyways.
So I would encourage people, just get involved with, and it doesn't have to be strictly flying. Like again, the EAA, getting involved with building airplanes and meeting people, go to your local flying club, meetings, join the flying club. I was very involved when I was in airports. I was very involved with, it's a group called the American Association of Airport Executives, and there were tons of pilots in there. I mean, getting involved with airport management professionals. I mean, you don't know, the person that you meet in there may have a connection with someone at United or American.
I mean, you met Patrick and you saw a glimpse of what you wanted to do, even if it's just a sense of direction. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're please. I mean, a handshake and a nice smile and a professional attitude, like when they get to experience that one-on-one in person, it goes a long way. And so, get involved and try to get your face out there as much as possible, because you never know what kind of opportunities that will lead you to. So.
Right. I keep hearing that, and I think the reason I get so infatuated when people say that, I just got involved or you should just get involved, is because, I don't know, at some point in time when I would hear those sorts of things, it sounds sort of like a cliche, easy answer for someone to give instead of giving you real advice, is what I was thinking to myself. It felt like you're just saying something, but like, give me like more specific advice is kind of how it felt in the moment. But when you're saying it now, and I've heard so many people say it, it really is kind of that simple. Now, maybe you're thinking about time and money, right? Who has time to go volunteer somewhere? Or what if I don't know anyone, or I don't know anything about aviation? How am I supposed to go volunteer somewhere where I don't know anything? Maybe those things come to mind. I don't know. But what you did was cool because you found a way to get paid to be involved, and that would take you to the next step. And I think it's okay to think like that. You don't have to have everything all figured out. I guess maybe that's what it is. Maybe people think they need to have everything all figured out.
No, it's you're always building your career brick by brick, and it's a never-ending, progressive. You're building on top of your experience, and I would just highly encourage people, go to the local FBO and ask, like, who's head of the EAA chapter, or for women, the 99s. You can go out and paint compass roses on the runway with all of the women in aviation, and that's a good way to
be around,
just meet them and be around. And I think that it leads to a lot of opportunities. So
okay, well, thank you for sharing that. I like that kind of story. So you went to college, you started working, you met Patrick, and that bug kind of was buzzing around. And you're like, I think it's time to kind of maybe go into flight training. Did you do any flight training before that?
I did. So at Louisiana Tech, they made all of the aviation management students solo.
Okay.
And then when I moved from Texarkana, or I'm sorry, from Fort Myers back to Texarkana, I did a little bit of Part 61 flying.
Uh-huh.
That made things even worse for as far as my, desire to go back in aviation. That didn't help at all.
Yeah, you had to
So
do it.
doing a little bit of local flying, and then of course the whole thing with Patrick and
Yeah.
the just the how the industry has changed over the last 4 years is quite incredible. And,
Yeah.
all of that combined, it was go time.
And so I have two questions, and I guess I'll probably say both and have to repeat the second. But the first question is, what was the leading up to making the decision to start flight training full time at Thrust Flight? That's a big decision. So I kind of want to understand where you're at in that moment, and if there was a little friction, and kind of what made you what made you go ahead and be like, okay, I got my ducks in a row, now I'm doing it. What did that kind of look like? And I'm gonna follow up with kind of how the industry has changed over 5 years rather than just 1 or 2 years. So
yeah, I'll answer your first question in a way as far as kind of what was my decision as far as what made me want to do it, and then what about thrust that I like.
Right.
There was really no friction. I think you have to love what you do for work to really enjoy what you do for a career.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Me personally, flying airplanes is just something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I think it was, regarding thrust, I mean, you see it firsthand. Our maintenance record is impeccable. Brand new airplanes. We're very structured. We're just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And, having those conversations with Patrick, when you make a decision that way, you want to make sure you're investing your time and resources into something that's going to, invest the same amount back into you.
Yeah.
And I truly felt that in thrust and talking to Patrick, and so it was such an easy decision.
Well, then I wonder, what kind of role did quitting your job and things like that play? Did relocating and things like that? Were those hard decisions, or did it kind of just make sense because of the way the loan stuff was worked out?
Yeah, I was fortunate. Half of my family lives in DFW, so that worked out for me.
Okay.
But I did look into the student housing, and I think that's a wonderful option that Thrust provides. Not many places do that, and to provide those extra resources to make this successful for somebody. There really wasn't, as far as moving, that's such a big decision. I was just, you got to do what you got to do.
So, okay, I guess that's what I was wondering. And I can hear the difference between when people make those decisions. So you're making a decision based on what you just really want to do. And the decision's too big to make those things a bigger factor.
Yeah.
It kind of is what I hear anyways.
If you want to do this for a living, you're going to figure out a way to make it happen. Just we as humans are wired that way. You got to, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of determination and some sacrifices, along the way. But if you truly want to fly airplanes for a living, you can do it.
Yeah. It made enough sense to you, and you're like, well, none of that stuff's going to matter.
Well, and even before I found out about Thrust, I was looking at other programs, just doing some, late night investigating. And one of them was the Destination 225 program. And I was prepared before I met, really came about Thrust to make the move to Phoenix. That would have required me to quit my job just like I did, but uproot my life from living in Texarkana my whole life and going out there. But it was that itch that it's worth it,
It's that kind of decision, yeah. If you're willing to make moves like that, then you're willing to do it, and everything else isn't you're just gonna figure it out.
Absolutely.
So. Okay, well that's good to hear. I just like for people to hear things like that because a lot of people are on the fence about starting flight training, and they might come up with a lot of reasons why they should or shouldn't. And I guess it's just good to hear other people's decision-making process. So.
And as far as from an industry perspective, it's kind of insane what we do for a living. It's you sit back and you think we get paid to fly airplanes, and it takes a lot of hard work to do what we do. But at the same time, it's probably the most rewarding career that I can think of. We connect loved ones and people to their, what's important to their lives every day, and we get to be at the helm of that. We're responsible for that.
Right.
We get paid to do it, and I don't know how many times traveling back home from Florida during the holidays, I'm putting my entire faith in those two gentlemen up, or ladies, or men in the front, and I'm, thankful and grateful for them, and that's just a cool responsibility to have. And it's going to be so much fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is.
I like the way you said that. What would you say, let's say you met someone and you're in line at the grocery store or something, and they're like, oh, you fly? Because they see your shirt or something. I've thought about that, but man, I don't know. What about the jobs? And is the hiring slowing down? And that's all they really know, but they don't know that much yet. What would you tell that person from your position if you knew they wanted to fly?
You know, I would tell them that, you know, look further into the future. Don't really focus on the now, right? Because if we focus too far, or correction, if we focus too, you know, if we're too nearsighted, it's easy to become discouraged.
Yeah.
Because in reality, it's been said on many of the podcasts with Thrust, the industry is very cyclical, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to happen. But if you truly want to do this for a living, do it. There's no question about it. And there's going to be struggles. We all deal with them. But, you know, if you've made it that far, you're going to figure out a way to get through it again.
Right, because it's like, yeah, there's going to be the struggles, but I guess if you look at it as optimistically as it kind of sounds right now, you can just kind of make a pretty broad checklist that's like, hey, you know, find a way to get into school and get through it without working, and which is built into people's loans, or if you have family, or, you know, do what you got to do to figure out how to get through the schooling. But at that point, if there's a method to do it, then you check off the boxes. I got each rating, you know?
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, now find a way to work. And you think you're not going to be able to find a way to work? You know, I guess most people, by the time you get through in a program like Thrust, it's kind of hard to not be someone who's employable, I think, in my opinion. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's easy to get a job, but you'll find work, and then you'll make your way to the airlines.
And I think, you know, part of the reason why what sets Thrust apart is, you know, the type of training we receive and how structured we are, and you know, our ground and flight knowledge is, you know, superior to other places that you can just get a gauge on that by someone who's talking to you can tell, like, man, I don't know where you did your training, but you've definitely got an upper edge, and it's, you know, we're in control of our own destiny. So we can, if we want to make it happen, make it happen.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it. And
so if someone says, sorry, I'm going to keep doing this because I like to hear your response, but I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. So, because there's people who have these concerns. So if someone's concerned about, you know, not being able to get a CFI job, which is a understandable concern, like, what do you say to that kind of thing, do you think? And I know it's maybe hard for you to answer because you did make it into Thrust, but I'm just curious if you have a viewpoint on that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is there's, you know, being a CFI, while it is, you know, one of the faster ways to get your hours, it's not the only way. You know, making those connections, going back to doing that. You never know who somebody might just need you to fly them for business, you know, that you met at a flying club meeting. So that, and I would say be willing to relocate. I mean, I was very blessed and fortunate to work for Thrust after going through the program. But I was prepared to not, you know, I was thinking, you know, I may have to move to Maine or to Washington State or somewhere just to, I'm kind of in that, you know, the hardest part is getting your hours, right? Yeah. Once you get your first airline job, it's smooth sailing after that. And it's going to require sacrifices. And so, you know, I would tell that person, don't give up hope. There are jobs out there for you, I promise. Yeah. And if you're willing to be flexible and look at different locations across the country and to, you know, make some sacrifices, but most importantly, work hard and show that, you know, be the difference. Show up to those places in person, flight schools that you want to work for. You know, emailing your resume, while that is making a connection, a more personable and more impactful connection is walking in there with your resume in hand and going up to the chief pilot and saying, hi, my name is Tyler Brown, and I would really love to work here. If you've got 5 minutes to chat, here's my resume.
You don't feel like you're bothering that person?
No.
Why not?
If I try to view myself in that position, and if someone did that to me and I was the chief pilot, I would say, this person took that extra step, and there you go. That tells me right now as an instructor, this person's gonna maybe put their best foot forward working for me as a flight instructor, and I would, you know, or if we can't talk at that moment, you know, I appreciate you coming in and I do want to talk to you. I'm a little busy right now, but why don't we set up a time to either talk on the phone, or why don't you come back tomorrow, or it just at least establishes that connection.
Yeah, I guess I like to ask that because when I first started in some of the things that I do, I didn't want to ask people because I thought I'd be bothering them for some reason. And what I've come to learn, not only in the things that I've done, but from when I hear pilots and what people may not understand unless they're a pilot, is that it is really community based. It is. It's not like networking at a corporate event where you kind of have to like shake hands and small talk. It's not that.
Right.
Pilots love to talk about flying.
We like to tell each other we're pilots, you know. So
Exactly. If someone's a pilot, you're gonna know.
you're gonna know. Yeah.
So it's not that. You're not bothering someone. It's not small talk. It's true curiosity. You can go and ask people about things. You can hand them your resume and say, man, I don't know, my resume might suck. Can you tell me, like, is there any way, like, you could tell me whether or not it sucks? That could be your question. You can just be honest about how you feel about things. So I guess for those people who don't understand it, you really can do those sorts of things. It's not just something that people say. Maybe I was just hard-headed. I'm thinking from a perspective, I was really hard-headed. So, but I wanted to do things, and I wasn't resourceful by asking questions. Yeah. So anyhow.
And doing that it's tough. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you know, I didn't really come out of my shell, if you will, until college, and it's, you know, it's mentally, like, we struggle with, like, man, this is a little awkward, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, just if you can get over that small barrier, and it ends up leading to a CFI job, you know, you look back on that in 2 years and like, man, I'm glad I did that, you know. So
it looks like a no-brainer in hindsight.
Yes,
yeah,
I'm telling you though, but doing that face-to-face interaction and you know, really showing that you care and that, you know, I'm going to be a darn good CFI for you. I'm going to make sure that I do good work and show that adequate instruction. I mean, just walking in and doing that's that first step, and that, you know, again, from my perspective, I would be very impressed with that. So.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so just kind of recap some of that stuff we talked about, because I'd love to ask you a little bit about some of how your training went and what you're doing now.
Sure.
Just to kind of like, for anyone who's listening who might still be might be a CFI or a student at the moment, I'd like to get into some of those things. But to recap what we kind of just talked about, what I hear you saying is that if you really just focus on being a sufficient pilot, an adequate, competent pilot, and you're not afraid to talk to people, you really don't have too much to worry about. You're going to get through the difficult parts because those are the things that it takes. That's kind of what I hear from you. Does that sound, when you think like,
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Yeah. Do you add anything to that?
Well, you know, I'll say that just like myself, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes. You're always learning all the way up until you retire from the airlines. You're going to be learning every single day, right?
Right.
And leaning on each other is the biggest piece of that, right?
Yeah.
You know, the community, again, goes back to the aviation community and how tight-knit we are, like you said.
And is there an example of that, just real quick, that you could think of, I guess, maybe that you've, like, that's helped you?
Well, I'll give it from two avenues. One, from just a personal, so the distant relative that we have in aviation, he's been a huge resource for me during this time. And then, but not only that, he's put me in connection with other people that are, you know, he lives in California, but he's put me in connection with resources that live in Paris, Texas.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or that live in
man.
McKinney, and I can call them and just talk to them.
That was like a distant relative, right? Did you talk to them very often before?
Very few and far between, but once he found out that I was doing aviation, it was like we're best friends.
That's my point.
Now. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And he, you know, he's helped me out a bunch, but you know, just being able to pick up the phone and call these connections and these resources that he's, you know, hey, again, going back to that conversation of what about when I get discouraged about hiring, you know, especially for someone who's almost there, you know, who can I talk to about that, you know, and I call these people and they encourage me and they tell me, you know, do this will help you, and do this, and they give me some sense of direction. So that, you know, if you instruct, leaning on your fellow instructors, like we both go through the same struggles, and hey, how did you overcome this issue? How did you do this? And, and that helps you kind of navigate, you know, rough waters.
Yeah, it seems like pilots pretty quickly develop a sense of humility, in a sense. Maybe not all pilots. Some pilots might walk around and might think they have they're the hottest thing, you know, whatever. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, every time I'm talking to a pilot, when it comes to flying, no one's too good to get the right answer, because I mean, you're going to be in the sky, and there's lives and equipment, and there's lots of things going on that you need to be responsible for. And I guess what I'm getting at is, like, do you feel like there was ever any moments in your training where you kind of had to realize you needed to rely on people more and ask more questions, and like you had to put yourself aside. How did you overcome some of the mistakes you might have made, and your ego might be hurt, and I have to be coachable? Like, did you ever struggle with any of those things?
Yeah, well, so I would say probably the one area for me was after getting my private pilot's license. You feel like you're king of the world, right? You're like, I'm a pilot now. I can officially call myself a pilot.
Yeah.
I'm the man. I know what I'm doing. And then you
Right.
go straight into your instrument rating, where that's a lot of new information.
Yeah.
And in full transparency, I did not pass my instrument check ride the first attempt, and that was a huge blow to me, right?
Yeah, especially when you feel so proud before and you come off of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, talking about that humility, I called my instructor when it happened. And again, he was there for me, and I appreciate that. And we had a long phone conversation where he just told me, you got to move on, man. You've got to, it's behind you. Let's figure out what you did wrong, and let's make that the best check ride recheck you've ever done in your life. I mean, I want you to go in there and blow that DPE away and show him that, hey, I'm better than what you saw last time.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you have to kind of take that step back. And again, like you said, I don't know everything. I really don't, even though I like to think I do.
I understand.
As pilots, there's
so
a
much
lot
to
to
know.
learn.
Yeah.
There's so much to know, and you do not know everything.
And you might know a lot and still need them. Yeah.
Even as an instructor, I'm still figuring things out. But I picked myself up and went back in there and knocked it out of the park. And that was a big learning lesson for me to figure out. It's aviation is that industry where you find your true self, right?
Right.
Your how you handle adversities, and that's important.
I think that's part of why people might like it a little bit, in the sense that we have a lot of people who came from jobs that were like they considered very boring, or they had to sit still too long. Like there's accountants and things that are here, insurance professionals that transfer into Thrust Flight as a student and start over, right? But I say that because it's that friction, that difficulty, that nuance, that kind of having to test your own, I don't know what, grit, I guess, that people, I think is part of it that people like, and it keeps you real human.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for sharing about the check ride, because I think a lot of people struggle with, and I guess I want to know how you handled it. Like now going forward after that, did you kind of have to manage, like, did you still get as excited as you did for passing your private check ride? And what I mean is, like, did it feel any different when you passed your instrument?
Yeah, it felt, I was upset, right? When I failed the first check ride, I was discouraged, thinking, man, like, what if I made a mistake? What if I can't do this, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that drive home was not the best.
Yeah.
And didn't get much sleep that night.
Uh-huh.
And again, thankfully my instructor was there. And to answer your question, it felt a little bit better passing that one, doing it the second time around, because you realize, like, hey, just a minor setback, and it's one step back, but two steps forward. We're gonna make some serious progress. And now looking back at that as an instructor, I'm thankful for that experience, because number one, I'm going to make sure my students don't fail on the things that I failed on that check ride. I make sure to prioritize that when I teach an instrument student, and it helps me communicate to my students now, like, I've been through that. If they unfortunately fail a check ride, I can relate to them, and I can tell them, look, it's fine. This is how you handle this. I did it. I'm here for you. Let me know what you need. And it's, becoming a pilot's not easy. It really is not. And you're gonna have failures. I've had plenty of them.
Yeah.
It's all about how you overcome it.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's why I asked. It seems like that's a really big lesson in aviation. Your bubble gets popped really quick, and I've been at jobs where you see people who are really good. I mean, I'm a yapper. I'm sometimes a personality hire. People like me, and maybe I'll get a raise or something just because people like me, and I don't think that's always fair. But I've seen people move way past me without really caring about what the work they're doing, and I've always cared about the work I'm doing. And I think when it comes to being a pilot, there's not really a lot of faking it till you make it. It doesn't seem like to me.
You can't afford to. I mean, our industry, we've got people's lives in our hands. A lot of people. I mean, when you're flying a airliner one day, all those people are depending, like we said, all those people are depending on you, and you can't afford to, if you make a mistake, it's all right. we're moving on, and
Yeah.
we're gonna not do that again, and we're gonna make sure we don't do it again.
Right.
And you've got to move on.
Yep. You don't get far in aviation without learning the lesson of being able to like move past your failures.
Yep.
Yeah. And you just can't. You can maybe get further in other places, but no, I don't think in aviation. So, especially as a pilot. Well, okay. So let's say you pass your instrument now and you're in commercial. You know, I guess at that point, by the time you finish commercial, is there maybe a part of those first three ratings that were probably the most difficult to you that you could remember?
I would say, instrument in particular, the ground knowledge is a little challenging just because, the ground knowledge for commercial and private are relatively the same with just a few extra things in commercial.
Uh-huh.
Instrument is brand new to most people. And
Right.
so it's a little difficult. And I think, studying with my peers who I started ZTA class with
Right.
was the most beneficial thing to me, that we would just simply go into one of the classrooms that Thrust has, and we'd reserve a whiteboard.
Yeah.
And we would just sit there and we would go over instrument knowledge or commercial knowledge, and we would try to use that camaraderie and that the friendship that we built in the class to, that helps learn more than just opening a. Don't get me wrong, I want you to open a book and I want you to read and
Yeah,
do some
exactly.
studying, but on top of that, I also want you to study with somebody, because you can ask yourself certain questions and answer it correctly, but maybe they have a different way of asking it, the same question, and
Right.
it makes you think a little more, and it
Right.
gives you that holistic knowledge of what you're supposed to know. But I would say that was probably the most beneficial, and yeah, it was just very rewarding. So
Yeah, I wanted to mention the fact that you talked about being in the classroom, and you guys kind of got to feed off each other a little bit. I just filmed one of our podcast episodes. I don't think it's up yet. And the gentleman, he was actually a civilian pilot. He actually went in the airlines and then went to the Air Force.
Okay.
And that was a very interesting thing to hear about, because they had a whole different route of going through things. He got to talk about some of the differences. But one of the big differences he talked about that he didn't really get to experience until he got to the Air Force. This is the military, and he talks about how they make them just hang out all day and talk about aviation. Like, they can't actually do anything other than study and fly. And then once they do good on this test and that test, they give them a little more free time to go on an extra long lunch, and then they get a little more free time to maybe take to do something extracurricular.
Sure. Yeah.
But obviously that's a little more extreme in the military. But I thought it, but he said it before I did, that when I explained to him our whole program and how people hang out in the hangar all day when they're not flying and they do study, he's like, man, it kind of sounds like what I did in the military. And he talked about how he thinks that's like such a benefit. And that's not something we orchestrate, it's just students who do it. And I guess I just wanted to bring that up, was that the military pilot was very impressed by that. And he's also an airline pilot. He thinks that that's probably one of the most beneficial things you could look for.
Yeah, I would agree.
So look for a school.
Yeah.
If you're, just real quick, I would do a little bit of a plug. Look, if you're someone who's interested in flying, you may not be near a Thrust Flight, so maybe we're not the best option. Maybe you're looking for something like a different kind of program. But make sure, even if it's just a single teacher at a Part 61 setup, and he's just a guy who wants to kind of instruct, or a woman who wants to instruct, just make sure there's someone around in that scenario that you can talk to that cares about aviation and cares about you and aviation. That's all that I'm saying. I think that really matters. And so, Google flight schools near me, take a discovery flight, all that good stuff if you're considering it, and go in somewhere and fill out the vibes. If Thrust Flight might be near you, come take a discovery flight with us, or just whoever's closest. But look for that connection. I think that goes a long way. Just want to put that plug in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I'll say that was probably one of the biggest things about Thrust that I enjoyed, is touring the campus and actually seeing people work together.
Yeah.
Because after talking to Patrick, he's like, we need to come look at the campus, and
Right.
that was about the time that Thrust got their first batch of archers.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
the ground classes were also a big selling point for me, because it's easy to give people a stack of books and say, have fun. We'll see you.
I failed chemistry because of that one time.
Yeah,
I took that hard.
That's a lot asking of somebody, especially in an accelerated program. And Thrust kind of goes that extra mile of let's put you in a classroom setting and try to help you understand that. Now, you're still gonna have to do stuff on your own. That's like with anything. We're trying to get you done so you can move on to bigger and better things,
Right.
and make a career out of this.
Yeah.
But I think having those ground classes and just being at the school leads to that welcoming environment that Thrust tends to give off,
Right.
unlike other, it's just a welcoming environment that
Yeah.
makes me want to be at the school to hang out and to
Mm-hmm.
hey, in ground class today when we were talking about approach blades, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think he meant by this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the conversation leads to another. Somebody joins the table, and we just keep studying.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, and thank you then for painting that picture, because I want people to understand that, and hopefully they see some more of our content or on our Instagram or something where we share a lot of things about the students, because I can go out at any time and find students to talk to. So
Sure.
whether they're flying or not. So let's say this is especially for people who are training right now, or maybe someone who just likes to hear about this kind of stuff. Is there anything like super particular that you maybe spent a little extra time on, something a little technical? Maybe it's a maneuver, maybe it's your landings, or maybe it's just like an FOI, maybe it's some sort of just concept that was hard to grasp for you. Was there anything like that you spent a little extra time on that I could maybe ask you about after you tell me about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was fortunate to have come into Thrust with about 43 hours of flying time.
Right.
So I probably my private instructor at Thrust would be grateful, because he's like, man, I don't have to go through the landings with him. He actually knows how to land an airplane, but learning how to land is going to be one of the most challenging things you'll do as a pilot, but it's also the hardest thing. Once you land an airplane and you've gotten over that hump, it's just natural. Landing an airplane, once you've got it, you've got it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like when you're in the midst of struggling with landings, that's one thing you just have to. And I try to remind my private students, just get over this hump, and I promise you, once it clicks, and it won't ever be an issue for you again.
Have you seen something that helps it click more often for a lot of people? Maybe not everyone, but is there a favorite go-to? I'm gonna try this out first and see if it clicks.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do as a private instructor, number one, the first thing I want to work on with a student is their stabilized approach to the runway. If you can't get to the runway, then how are we going to land, right?
Right.
We need to safely get to the runway.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll hear in your training, you'll hear people talk about ground effect and what that float feels like in ground effect, and where your eyes should be directed. So to kind of help lock that in, what I like to do with a student on the first 2 or 3 landings lessons is I will slow flight in ground effect for them. I'll fly the airplane to make sure that everything is safe, and I'll tell them, I want your eyes outside, and I want you to see what this looks like, and lock in that imagery, right? I want you to see this and feel that float, feel what ground effect looks like. I want all your senses to be focused on this while I'm flying the airplane, and then let them lock it in. And then we just step by step, and then I'll tell them, okay, I want you to fly us into ground effect.
Achieve that.
And then I'll take over, and then it's just step by step. And that has tended to really, really help them out. And then sometimes I'll, if I feel comfortable, okay, let's land it, right? Let's cut the power now that you've floated in ground effect, and let's, just build on it. And that tends to help them out a bunch.
I think and again, I'm not a pilot, obviously, right? But I've talked about these landings a lot, and I've helped film videos for maneuvers, and so it seems like you just kind of identify where their difficulty is, and you just take it a couple steps back until you fix that thing. But I'm hoping that it seems like a lot of our CFIs talk about that. They can identify where it is in the approach, in the turn, or whatever it may be. And I don't remember all of the terms. Can you break that down for me real quick, actually? There's probably an easy way to list all the main checkpoints to hit on the landing, right? And I know that's the turn, and then like you're saying, the approach and letting it down. But could you do like a quick little hey, nail all these things in a row, one before the other, and you're gonna be very likely to do well.
Well, I've always been told, my instructor prior to Thrust, was a big proponent. A good pattern always leads to a good landing.
Right.
Right. So you always want a good traffic pattern first. And what is it?
There you go. Sorry, traffic pattern.
Well, so we know the traffic pattern is our standard turns around the runway. We have the 5 different legs. We have upwind, crosswind, downwind, base, and final. And if you use the appropriate visual contact, and you make it spaced out, and you are looking for traffic, and you take your time, that sets you up for your good final approach into a landing, right?
Yeah.
So making those turns in the traffic pattern when you're supposed to, being very vigilant for other traffic, and up until the point to where you start your base turn, right? And a base turn is going to be one of the more important parts of your traffic. That's your first opportunity to get good visual contact with the runway to judge your descent.
Right.
You know, all right, now I'm going to start making some of my adjustments in my to my power, pitch to, you know, set myself up good on final.
Right.
And then when you turn on final, you know, now you are just fine tuning your sync rate, your actual altitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And using fine adjustments to your pitch to maintain the appropriate airspeed. Airspeed is
Right.
the biggest key component to a good landing. Maintain proper airspeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your eyes focused outside, glued on your aiming point, and see how that moves in
Mm-hmm.
relation to your windscreen and your airplane, right? And that's gonna, you know, secondarily make you adjust your power and your pitch, right?
Right.
But as far as the final approach to landing, we have the approach to the runway, we have the round out, the flare, and the touchdown, right? They're different parts. So
Mm-hmm.
just make sure you don't confuse them as one continuous motion, right? It's
That's my point,
arrival to the runway, you do your round out, and you ride that float until you can bleed off enough energy until the airplane wants to settle down onto the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
You control how quickly it settles on the pavement by using back pressure, and that is your flare.
Yeah.
And then you just let the airplane do its thing.
Yeah, it's going to do its thing. I was talking to, on one of our recent podcasts, someone went over the landings pretty well with me. Caitlin Brown actually did a great job at explaining the landing and talking about getting over the hump by doing the coming into a ground effect and seeing what that feels like before trying to lay it down, because people are kind of like rushing out of ground effect or not utilizing it to its full potential to, you know, to bleed off some of the power and things like that. And so she kind of painted that well for us on one of those last episodes. Actually, that one's up, so go check that one out. But what you're saying is like kind of like a continuation of that. And we haven't gotten into that conversation a lot on here about the importance of the feeling that ground effect, because that's that last step. And I think, would you say that if, let's say someone was kind of struggling with their approach or their traffic pattern and their approach, would you say that still feeling ground effect would completely probably like change a little bit of how they even go into their approach and their base turns?
Yeah, I would say that. You know, I think your sight is also a big one, and that's what I try to.
She talked about the horizon.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do you put your eyes so that way, you know, you kind of burn that imagery in your brain as to what does ground effect look like. And that's one of the key things that I'm looking for when I, you know, do that low approach and ground effect for them is to, I want their eyes outside so they can lock in what that sight picture is, so they don't round out too early or they don't round out too late, you know, that they understand this is what it should look like. And then combine that with that feel. If you're struggling with that, you know, my landings were not great, just like a majority of people who learn how to fly at first. And it took a while to do that. You know, if you need to move on to something else and then come back to the landings, totally understandable. You know, your stabilized approach to the runway is a big one for me and my students. I really want them to get the airplane trimmed out at the appropriate airspeed to where they can quickly take your hands off the controls and the airplane just continues on that continuous descent.
That's what you're saying.
And I want them to do less work so their attention can be divided mostly outside. And they're not having to, you know,
like look and think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Task saturation, I guess.
If you trim the airplane out and you get it configured and you get it flying at a stable descent at the appropriate airspeed, everything else is just going to fall into place.
I imagine, because again, I don't land planes, I imagine it being kind of like when you're trying to like throw a ball and or you're like, you know, trying to hit the ball or something like that. You know better to look at a certain point and keep your eye on the ball. But yeah, sure. But it sounds like the tendency when trying to land the plane is to see the ground, and before you touch it, your brain wants to see it so you know when you're about to touch. I feel like that's probably what's happening often. But when you put your eye on the horizon, that's the equivalent of keeping your eye on the ball, because you know, you go where your eyes go, and that's true in so many other ways of life, right? Like, you know, whatever you're thinking about is what you're going to end up kind of being around or doing or adopting. It's the same thing in that just little moment, it seems like. You look over there, it's going to tell you what to do with your body and with your plane and with your hands. and instead of looking down, you're gonna want to go down.
Yep, exactly.
Anyways, I just like the analogy. But we've talked about a lot of different things here. I feel like we could probably just keep going, but now you're a CFI, and I want to ask you about, what it's like being a CFI. You kind of already said that, but even furthermore, is there something that you're kind of looking forward to? Is there something you're working on? Are you kind of like looking at jobs or anything like that? You don't have to tell on yourself or Thrust, but
No,
Yeah.
as we sit in this moment, I'm at 1,440 hours, so 60 hours away from hitting the magic number.
Was that like a week here at Thrust?
Oh, I know. I could probably get that in the next couple of days if I really
Yeah.
wanted to. Jokingly, of course. But yeah, it's, I think one of the most rewarding things as a CFI at Thrust, again, comes back to that structured environment.
Uh-huh.
We do a lot as far as scheduling and as far as bidding and policies and procedures. We mimic the airlines because that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to get everyone trained for the airlines. And that's very helpful and beneficial to me as a instructor who's about to move on to that next step, where it's not as much of a culture shock with how airlines. And granted, it's going to be different, but
Yeah.
I'm used to that structure and I'm used to that the maintenance schedules and how things work as far as swapping airplanes and all that. I think that's a big thing I'm thankful for at Thrust.
Yeah.
And I think Thrust, the culture that we apply or that we provide here,
Right.
attracts students that, from all different personalities, and that's keeps me on my toes because not every learner is the same, right?
Right.
And it's helps me find different ways to teach the same material, essentially. And that's going to help me when I'm sharing a cockpit with, my captain, how are we going to handle this problem? I'm going to have to adapt to whoever's sitting in that left seat. And eventually when I move to the left seat, who's in the right seat? We've got to work together no matter who you are.
Yeah.
And I think Thrust has really prepared me for that.
And maybe this is one of my last questions, but do you think there's something to say about, because it's easy to overlook that there is like a way to plug yourself into something, like there's a structure, there's a, there's something built that you kind of have to participate in. You're not just like a freelancer, you're not just some guy who gets to show up and do things the way they want to do. I guess that's what I'm wondering. Is there something about learning the ropes that you would emphasize to people? Because I think that we all think about efficiency. We want to go, maybe we'll do Part 61, maybe we'll go to a different school, maybe we'll take our time, and it's like efficient in terms of money, and I get to learn at a pace that works for me. And all those things are great, and it might be best for a lot of people. But one thing is I don't think people consider what you just said, the culture shock of participating in an organization that does things a certain way, therefore you have to meet certain expectations. I mean, if you're just learning how to fly from an individual, you may not be as prepared for the airlines as if you were learning from an individual who's like an airline pilot and knows that that's what you're wanting to do, or a program that does that. Anyways, is there a way that you would maybe try to emphasize that to someone who isn't thinking about that aspect?
Yeah, I would tell them, well, depending on what your ultimate goal is, I guess would make a huge, difference. But
if you're willing to be a, professional pilot.
Yeah, if you want to be an airline pilot, I think challenge yourself. If you don't feel like the accelerator program is for you and you don't feel like you can keep up to pace, yeah, you can. You can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone can do it. It takes an extra step from you.
Mm-hmm.
It takes extra work from you, but you can do it, and it's so much rewarding on the back end when you complete the program and you. Man, I finished all my ratings in 9 to 10 months. That's pretty incredible.
That's
right?
amazing, yeah.
I tell people that, and people don't believe me. They're like, "There's no way." It took me 4 years in college to do all of that. So,
you still come out with a little less sometimes.
Oh, exactly, yeah. So. But it's. It's definitely doable. I mean, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And then, I would say as far as getting plugged in, just ask questions, like find ways to find answers, right? I'll say as an instructor, it's funny because, I guess I'm one of the more senior instructors here now, which I didn't think would happen because I remember, feel like just like yesterday, I was my first day at Denison.
Yeah.
And I was asking so many questions to the instructors. Hey, how do you do this? How do you teach this? How do you do this? Or what happens if this happens, right?
Right.
And you could tell they were probably getting annoyed, but
It's how
I
am.
had to ask
a lot of-
questions.
you
Yeah,
had to ask
and
questions.
and now we've got new instructors, and I'm one of them more, and they're asking me questions, and it's like, man, it's time is a flat circle. It's like,
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, exactly.
But ask questions. Find industry resources and connections to ask questions, and
Yeah.
it's going to lead to good things for you.
And plugging in, regardless, I think there's so much of what we talked about that talks about plugging in today, and I think that would be a great point. If anyone were to walk away with anything from this podcast episode, it sounds like for me, I would hope that they hear how you talk about being involved and understanding the scope of everything, and kind of just really putting yourself into aviation and allowing yourself to just be enthralled in it, and letting that help you. And not everything is such a logical, you have to white knuckle it,
Right.
You can just plug in and be a part of, and that'll do a lot of the work for you. I mean,
yeah.
it'll motivate you, it'll keep you accountable,
Yep.
it'll teach you, you'll be exposed, you'll network naturally just by being plugged in.
Yep.
So, but do you have anything you'd like to add on, or any questions, or anything that you'd love them to comment about?
No, I would just say that, flight training, like we talked about in this podcast, it can be challenging at times, but stick to it, find a way to succeed and to get over whatever it is that you might be struggling with. And, it's going to be such a great career for you, so rewarding. And it's going to be just, when you're succeeding in the airlines or corporate aviation or charter or whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And you look back on your journey. I get all of my friends who are in the airlines now, when I don't want to say complain, right? But when I'm like, man, I'm so close and I'm so ready to be where you're at.
All right.
They tell me all the time, I miss those days.
No rush.
Yeah. Like, enjoy it, soak it in. I mean, I want you to, join the airlines and move on to the next step too. But it's like, they miss those days. They miss the days of taking up a Cessna or an Archer and going and doing steep turns and and stuff like that.
Because it's not quite the same in the jet. I'm sure the thrust is amazing, the power is amazing, but at the same time, I mean,
you're doing a lot more flying in that thing.
Yeah,
You're actually
exactly.
doing some flying, and they talk about it all the time, how they look forward to the weekend of just going and renting an airplane and doing some actual flying and stuff. But try to enjoy the camaraderie, lean on your peers in the ZTA class, or instructors, a black shirt. Just find somebody and let us help you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that helped me get through the program, and I'm thankful for it every day.
Okay, awesome. Well, you hear it, guys. I mean, if you know you want to, I think you have great advice for them. And so maybe you're wondering, well, how do I know if I want to? Well, that is up to you to figure it out at the end of the day. But most people say you take a discovery flight at a local airport. There's usually someone who's going to give you a flight. You might even get something for free if you go hang out, like we were talking about. People love to take people up who've never been in a plane. They think it's fun. But otherwise, look up a discovery flight at a flight school that you could consider. And there's no commitment there. And you'll know pretty quickly. You'll get the itch. The bug might bite you. And if the bug bites you, then that's how you know. I just say that because I would hate for you guys not to do something you want to do. Thank you for watching this episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And if you're still listening, like, comment, and subscribe, of course. That really helps us out. And we're also on Apple Music and Spotify. And thank you, Tyler, for joining us. We'll see you guys next week.